Welcome, folks, to another episode of Boy Dinner. Today I'm joined by none other than me, myself, and I for episode 23. I'm excited. Although I'm by myself, I have a great opportunity in front of me to really work on my personal yapping skills without the ability to bounce ideas off of other people and get inspiration for what I'm about to say next, which is difficult for me, to be quite honest. I talk to a lot of people about speaking and things of that nature, and my fear of speaking in front of people is that I don't have a ton to say without the reference of what other people want to hear from me. So I love to get a reference. I love to hear people's questions, thoughts, ideas, etc., and that really gets the gears turning in my mind. But today will be a good test just to see how long I can talk for about various things. Which brings me to my first topic, which is being able to articulate what you think, know, and want to know. And I have a friend, his name's Michael. He makes content online, and he has a great video where he outlines the importance of being able to articulate, which quite literally haunts me. I think about it quite often, and it's challenging in my mind to want to really get better at that. I don't have the perfect speaking ability all the time, and so I think it's a really important thing. Why I think that's important, among all the other reasons that Michael outlines in his content, is that there's a certain confidence in actually knowing how to explain what you think. An example, in my own personal life growing up, I was running every single day as a 17, 18, 19-year-old for 3 of the years that I've been doing it. And it doesn't always make sense to people that see that you're doing something really consistently or arbitrarily consistently maybe. And so I would always get the famous pushback from maybe mom on certain occasions where, hey, why are you running when you don't feel well? Or why are you running when it's Christmas or we're on vacation? And to not be able to articulate why I was doing that, why it was so important to me, it actually makes things pretty difficult. It kind of takes a hit to your confidence, because when you're stopped in your tracks and unable to actually articulate the reasons why you're doing something, why you believe something, you're less likely to be pretty strong-minded and continuing to do that thing. And that's not a good thing if what you're trying to do is very positive. If you have people around you that are questioning your actions and behaviors and they happen to not be good ones, of course I would say that that is a positive. But at the same time, you've got to be very aware of why you're doing something, and you have to practice being able to tell other people why you're doing it. A situation I used to get in myself, I would be having conversations with me, and I'd say, man, this sounds pretty good. The ideas that I would be talking about in my own head seemed pretty sound, according to me, because when you talk to yourself, you're kind of speaking the language of intention rather than English or whatever language you speak to yourself in, or speak to other people in, rather. And so you kind of have a false confidence in your thoughts and ideas because, again, they're perfectly translated because you're talking to you. I experienced this a lot growing up. I would have all these big ideas and all these thoughts that were very deep and complex, and I would explain them to me and think, man, okay, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I mean. I know why I think this. I know everything about this idea in terms of my perception of it. And then somebody would ask me about that very thing or test me, maybe not knowing to them or knowingly to them, but that's what it felt like because I didn't exactly know how to articulate that thing. So obviously not a good spot to be. But again, it's something I'm consistently working on. I do love to have other people to bounce ideas off of and reference, but for me, being able to keep a constant train of thought going is a very important skill. I have people that I know of that are very good at public speaking, and I look at that as maybe not a weakness of mine, but something I definitely want to improve on. And I think when we're in a place where you have something you really want to improve on, or you see somebody else that has kind of the ideal in your eyes, right? So this could be financial thing even. This could be a certain confidence. This could be a certain skill set. This could be a certain type of relationship, whatever it might be. I think we all have pretty distinct examples in front of us or on social media or whatever else of people that have kind of the life we're looking for or have characteristics of those things that we're looking for. And I think the default that a lot of people go to is assuming that the person that has that thing or can do that thing, etc., is maybe a different kind of person. Or there's an innate capability in that person that is not in you. And that's something I'm incredibly thankful for, because early on in my life, as far back as I can remember, I recognized something super important, which is these people I look at that are incredibly successful or incredibly skilled or have that thing I'm looking for, they are absolutely no different from me on an innate level. Now, the only difference between myself and that person, well, there's probably a lot of differences between myself and that person, but I think the main one in regards to that thing I'm looking for would be decisions. So the only thing in between you and the place you want to be is decisions. And these people that are representing the place you want to be, they have simply made different decisions, choices that have gotten them to that point. Again, I think a lot of people start at the place of they must be different. I'm not cut out to do that thing or have that thing or whatever. And that's where people adopt a very limited mindset very, very early on in their lives, which is really the purpose why I do what I do. That is the purpose behind what I'm doing with my work and my content, social media, my coaching, all that stuff. I think it's so prominent. I don't even know if it's a timeline thing. I think there's always these days, maybe it's just a human kind of thing in a modern sense because there's so much comfort. But we always go to the limitation. It just so happens that the people that do amazing things, we're just really consistent and focused on something. And then we see those people in comparison to most people, and you think, oh my gosh, that's got to be some sort of alien. That can't be a real human being, because I know I can't do that thing. But that person very likely just started off in the exact same place you are, if not worse. I think, again, we think everybody's got kind of an innate ability in the thing that they're really good at. The mindset I've adopted as of late is if someone is really good at something, really talented at something, you say maybe extremely confident or an incredible runner or extremely financially well off, that person more likely started off at a huge contrast to that than starting off already very good at it. So the incredible runner, it's probably more likely that person did not like to run, wasn't super skilled at it, and that fueled their desire to get super good. The money thing, that might not be the best example because plenty of people start off with a lot of money, but as I normally say, I don't think money is the best measure of success anyway, so we can kind of get rid of that example. But for the most part, again, I think greatness and success is usually born of harsh contrast, which I think is very important to know, again, because we've got this limitation built into us almost, and I don't think that's actually very realistic. It's funny because a lot of young people, I'm talking elementary school, there's almost a coolness in accepting harsh realities really soon. And it's kind of annoying to me, and I always found it really annoying. You think of the fifth grader that already just chooses their dream job as something super practical and boring because they think it's cool to kind of cut off the dream thing and be realistic very early on. And you see this just with really young people in general that try and act too old. It's actually just uncomfortable and not as realistic because, again, I don't think being super limiting and having this mindset that people that do great things are different from you is actually realistic and honest. I think it's a comfort thing, obviously, because to do something meaningful, it's just difficult. I think comfort is a really big topic of conversation. And to be honest, I think it's cheapened a lot in the self-improvement realm. I think a lot of things are really cheapened in that, but comfort is one of those. There's always this, oh, avoid comfort at all times, but it's kind of just this ambiguous thing to say, and then it sounds good in Instagram reels and whatnot. But what comfort really is just staying where you are. It's a familiarity thing, and this comes in a lot of different forms. This could be nutrition. This could be fitness. This could be a relationship thing. You see that a lot where somebody's in a bad spot in a relationship. Maybe it's a super toxic sort of thing, and they stay in that relationship, and you think, what the heck? Why would you do that? Someone external is like, just leave. That's a way better option. But people love to be comfortable. People love to be in a situation that is familiar to them. So familiarity almost trumps positivity in most cases. On a larger scale, I think the whole comfort battle, whatever you want to call it, is more of a prehistoric timeline issue than it is just a character issue. I think in relation to our biology, the modern society is not fitting to that. I think we genuinely need some sort of struggle. I think a lot of that is found in a physical sense. Obviously, there are large ties between physical and mental, but again, I think it stems from a physical struggle if we're talking historically, and that kind of keeps your body and mind in check in a way, and it's a reality. You need those things to be in your life. You can't not have difficulty because you'll always be comfortable, which will actually just be more uncomfortable because you won't be doing anything and kind of paying effort towards what your makeup is. I think there's a very distinct reality to the fact that we need to push our bodies. We need to challenge our minds because that's how humanity really evolved. I'm sure there's plenty of details that could be debated or could be picked apart in that sense, but again, in a general sense, I do think that that is the case. And so our modern society literally allows for everyone to be extremely comfortable. Like, I don't think it's even realistic, again, in terms of our biological makeup, how comfortable our society is. And it's kind of funny because all the self-improvement and all that sort of stuff, it seems like arbitrary difficulty just being added to your day, just getting in the ice bath because whatever the heck. But really it's simulating something we need, not just doing something to be cool on Instagram, which sure, the ice bath is great for some Instagram clips and to make some nice edits, but in specific, the reason I even do the ice baths, there's a physical aspect to it 100%. I think people a lot of the times talk about the benefits in a physical sense. They'll talk about the increase in dopamine and all that sort of stuff, but it's still kind of it's good for recovery. It reduces inflammation, does all these things. Really, for me, even if it didn't do all the physical benefits, I would still be inclined to do it because my main reason for doing that on a consistent basis, it's just the mentality of it. To be able to overcome something very difficult consistently gives you an edge, right? And to be better at doing difficult things is kind of just being better at life. I think life has a few inevitables, one of those being difficulty. And if you train it, you just train your mind and body to be able to handle something, then you're just better at life. And mind you, the ice bath, every time I do it, is terrible, really. That's my perception of it. I don't usually have fun doing it. It feels very cold. There's always the mental battle, but it's these tiny incremental changes that you're looking for, tiny, tiny improvements on a scale of hundreds of days. I've been doing the ice bath for 430 days or something like that, 431 days, I think. And it's still immensely difficult. I have a hard time, and of course, that's the purpose of it. But every single morning, I wake up, and it's early. I'm likely tired from the day before, all of those things. And the ice bath and run combo, really, but the ice bath in specific weighs kind of heavy. And I used to have nightmares about the darn thing, so I'm not really at that point anymore, but it's still a pretty heavy idea to say, okay, I'm about to walk downstairs in a few minutes and be extremely cold and have to deal with it. But every morning there's kind of an analysis. I'm not just feeling that sort of way and then kind of airplane mode and going to do it. I'm analyzing why I feel the way that I feel. I might be taking into consideration the night's sleep that I got. How many hours of sleep did I get? Was yesterday's workout absolutely horrible? Am I really frustrated about something else that's taking my mind away from being able to focus on locking in, for lack of a better term, on controlling my mind in the ice bath, which it takes a lot of effort. It's not just a get in and exist kind of thing. There's almost a line that you're trying to stay above. Because if you give in to the cold, which maybe that feels like an abstract kind of term, I think if you're more used to doing things like the ice bath or whatever, it would make a little bit more sense. But if you give in, and I mean this in a negative way, where you kind of let it take control and you start breathing heavy and freaking out and you want to get out, that's not great. And that's more likely to happen when you aren't focused. When you can't take the time to really override the innate response. I think a part of doing it super consistently is trying to alter that innate response, which for me now does go towards the direction of control. I can get in there every day and not have a problem with it. Like I could, if you were seeing a video of me doing it, for example, you wouldn't be able to tell that I'm struggling. Now, that would not be the case. It's very freaking hard. Again, it's hard every single day that I get in that cold water. But again, the extremely micro changes, micro improvements is what I'm looking for, where after hundreds and hundreds of days of doing it, I've seen a difference. I can see a massive improvement in my ability to not only get into the water quicker, but handle my mind and body on the way in, and then once I'm in, controlling the breath and keeping my mind in a decent spot. Something I've been talking a lot about in my group community calls and even one-on-one coaching conversations. A lot of it is talking about the ability to tap into this improved self-awareness or confidence or whatever you're trying to build in yourself in higher stress situations, in more overwhelm. So I'll kind of explain a big issue in my childhood, which was anxiety. That was a very, very big challenge for me. I used to go around telling people that I worry all the time, right? It was almost my personality. I also considered myself very self-aware, which might not really go hand in hand, being super self-aware and being super anxious. But I think a lot of people can probably relate to having those two sides in their mind. So I would identify, in a sense, with being a very self-aware person. Now, school for me was kind of the source of a lot of anxiety and depression and all these labels that we can put on certain ways we feel. And every single day, right, there was a pattern. I would get into the school parking lot and start to freak out, basically. And there are plenty of details and moments that could describe that situation more, but I will save those for another time. And when I was out of that situation, I would recognize that I was very self-aware. I could do kind of the zoom out third person observation of myself in a way. And I would say, okay, I recognize that when I go to school, I freak out and I lose control and it's this horrible feeling. Why don't I tap into this self-awareness that I know I have when I'm at school? And then it won't be such a big deal. And not being in that environment, right, it seems pretty simple. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm confident in that. I can definitely do that. The second I pull up in that parking lot, it's gone. All the self-awareness is gone. So I've had a conversation with someone I know, and she said, I am painfully self-aware, but when I am in the situation where I'm by myself, deliberately trying to spend time with no distractions, maybe that self-awareness turns a little bit into panic, or it turns into negativity, or whatever else, right? Something along those lines. And maybe if you're listening to this, you can understand that sort of feeling. And my solution was more self-awareness. So painfully self-aware. However, that self-awareness not being available in those times of overwhelm, the solution would be even more awareness so that you can be aware. You can be painfully aware, we'll say, when you're not under stress, when you're not under overwhelm. But then when you are under that stress and overwhelm, you're still self-aware. And that's when you take that self-awareness to the next level and it actually becomes a tool in the toolkit, because being super self-aware just kind of any time is great, but you really want to be able to understand what's going on in your mind when you're facing challenges and you're very uncomfortable. And it could be happening on a really small level. You might just feel yourself getting nervous about something, and the more you practice skills that involve overcoming that mental barrier to the self-awareness, well, then you can tap into that a little bit more. So you start to get super nervous about something, and then you say, okay, hold on, wait, I'm doing that thing. You know, you have the step out from your mind kind of in panic mode, and you can analyze things. That right there, I think, is the most amazing skill ever. And I don't think anybody's perfect at it, but you can absolutely improve on your ability to do so. An example I like to use that makes a little bit more sense to people is weightlifting. And it's pretty easy to understand that the more you lift weights and you progress, you have days where you push really hard and kind of test the limits, and you have days where you're maybe about 80%. Well, you do that for long enough and your body somehow can tolerate lifting more weight. And you just did that through exposing your body to more weight than it's used to carrying or pushing or whatever. So that makes sense. More weight, progressive overload in a sense. Now your body can tolerate more weight. The mind is absolutely no different. Right? You think of a great example of, let's say, a 70-year-old man who's been to war and a 10-year-old. Now, let's say both of them have a brand new Apple iPad. And one is the iPad kid, one is the 70-year-old man who's been to war and so many life experiences, probably a lot of overwhelm and stress that we're talking about. Let's say both of them drop this new iPad and it cracks across the screen. Well, to the 5-year-old or 10-year-old or whatever age that I thought of 10 seconds ago and can't remember, to them, that's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to them. That kid, that's probably the end of the world to that kid. And then to the person who's been through an immense amount of difficulty and overwhelm in their life, it's probably not that overwhelming to them that a piece of glass on this whatever broke. So you can see that to the person that has been through more things, that has tolerated more weight in a sense mentally, can tolerate more weight when it comes to day-to-day life, and the person who can't. So when you look at your mind and you see the ability to tolerate difficulty, you can simulate that in very simple ways. I do a lot of them. One would be the ice bath, one would be waking up early, one would be running, one would be very difficult exercise. These things are, well, in some cases the physical weight, but in this case, the mental weight that is going to make you more able to tolerate difficulty, which again, if we go back to earlier in this conversation or monologue, being able to tolerate difficulty better means you are better at living because difficulty is inevitable. So I like to look at it that way because it makes it a little bit more simple. If you can do difficult things on your own terms, you are consistently building the skill set to be able to overcome all of the difficulties, stresses, whatever else that comes along with life. And those things are very prominent when you're trying to do something meaningful or difficult or get to a really great place in your life. And so I think that's very important. The cool thing is that it's super available. You don't have to have a certain amount of money. You don't have to have a crazy amount of resources to put yourself through some difficulty. I think when we look at that journey in general, right, kind of a sharpening of the mind or a self-discovery, if you will, it's a very gratifying experience because it doesn't get old. I think for the most part, you think of people that make a ton of money. I think you make $1 million a year. It's pretty cool. You make $10 million a year. It's pretty cool. I feel like $10 million a year and then 15 million and 20 million, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, what are we really doing here? You know, maybe it gets old. Maybe people like it because of the game, but I don't think the actual dollar amount really becomes that much more gratifying past a certain point. I would say there's a massive contrast to that in personal growth. You don't see somebody become more enlightened, we'll say, and not see great value in that. You don't see the people that run a marathon and then they're just like, okay, we're good there. It's always someone runs a marathon and then they're wondering when the next one is and how they can train and how they can get faster and how they can not panic at the start line as much. And then, what about the 50 miler? What about the 100 miler? What about the 240 miler? And you see the evolution of the mind continue to search for the next thing that will gratify that growth because it doesn't get old. So when you get into the self-improvement thing, you find that it's a very, very abundant source of improvement and progress. Progress being the thing that I think everybody wants, but doesn't always realize that. So I think a lot of people think when they get the job or they get the certain amount of money or they get the thing, that that's going to be satisfying in any sort of way. And I feel like I'm really repeating a cliche here because you hear that so much, but people still do it so much, right? Once I get to this point, I will be good to go. What people don't realize is that that point is just a new opportunity or a new level of progression. So you think about a relationship and, if you date and go through all these years of living together and spending time, I don't know, and then you get married, is it like, oh, okay, we're good to go, we're done? No, once you get married, that's when the real work starts, as far as I've heard from most people that are in that relationship, and that is the new point for another level of progress, right? So you're building up to that point where you guys have legally and maybe spiritually bonded into one. Well, now that is day one of a new type of lifestyle, new goals, new foundation of a family, all these great things. So if somebody were to look at the relationship as when you get married, oh gosh, sealed the deal, we're good to go, you could see how that could be pretty conflicting with being fulfilled and happy for the rest of your life. It's the same exact thing with anything, right? If I make a certain amount of money, I'll be good to go. Well, you make that certain amount of money, you probably need to do it again the next month, so you wouldn't actually be satisfied when you made it that one time because you have to do it again. And then you realize that it's just another starting point. I like to use weightlifting in a lot of analogies because it's pretty clear. This is another one of those. Man, if I could only bench 315. Well, I'll tell you this, as somebody who can bench 315, you hit 315, and then what's next? You're not good to go. In my case, maybe I am good to go because I don't really care about bench that much, so maybe not the best example, but there's always another weight. You bench 225 and you're at 195, 205, 215. You finally crack 225 and you're like, man, I'm the top of the heap. I'm him, right? And then you realize that once you hit 225, you're literally the worst at the next level. So out of the people that can bench 225 to 315, which is the next plate added to the bar, well, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. And so you just achieved this thing that was once the dream and the ideal lift, and now you're at the bottom of the group of people who can do 225 at least. So I think when you look at certain goals, you look at the ideal that you want to get to, the thing that you want to achieve, just look at it as a great goal, a great checkpoint, but it's really just the basis for a new level of progression. And I think if you go through life that way, it'll be a little bit more gratifying because you'll be more attached to the progression. You'll be attached to the growth that you get from that progression as a person, rather than just an arbitrary checkpoint that is seemingly going to satisfy you, but actually disappoint you when you get to that point. I think that will wrap up what I have to talk about today. I definitely paid very close attention to my word choice, trying not to use like and and all those things as much as I maybe naturally would. But I'm glad that I got to have this conversation with this circular lens in front of me, which in this case is you, the listener. And I hope to see you guys on the next episode. This has been fun. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great week. See you guys.